Hey, all, I think we're going to be starting in just a minute or so. Just had a late start here. Thank you for your patience.
Sounds good.
I think Fiona should be joining in just a moment.
I'm presenting, excuse me, I am upgrading Haley Peckett from DDOT so she can present.
Thanks. I also see that Chair Clem is needs to be promoted, I believe.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fiona Clem, Commissioner 1COA and Chair of ANC. Thank you, Commissioner Felsenthal. Commissioner Boots is not able to attend today, so I am going to be here in his stead and act as chair of the PSC meeting. Commissioner Felsenthal, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Commissioner Felsenthal from SMD 1C05. On off Columbia Road, bordered by Harvard. So yeah.
Thank you. And I probably should have said a minute ago, we're running a little bit late. So I will call this meeting to order because yes, we will call this meeting to order. Today is September 28th. This is the Public Services and Environment Committee. The first thing on the agenda is considering supporting street parking solutions for teachers. Apparently this is a new DDOT program. Haley Peckett, are you ready to present?
Yes, I am. Can everyone hear and see me?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you for your flexibility tonight since I am also presenting to 5A. So let me see here. Tell me, can you see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Great. All right. So I will go through a few slides very quickly and cover some key points about our new school parking zone program, including some of the origins and frequently asked questions from ANCs. And I'd be happy to focus the presentation on any discussions that you might have. And I believe there may be some DCPS staff that are also here if you have coordination or questions for them. So my name is Haley Peckett. I'm the Associate Director of the Curbside Management Division at DDOT. So we manage on-street parking, parking meters, revenue collection, digital permitting, all sorts of fun stuff. So my division oversees this program. Jason Meggs is our school's transportation planner. They are on vacation this week. And then their manager, Joe Kerwin, also has been doing a lot of work on this program. It's also unavailable to attend tonight. So you get me instead, but that's great. I'm excited to launch this program. But they are great resources if you have more detailed questions. So if you hear from them in the future, it's not because I don't love you. And we also have a program called Go DC Go, which is our transportation demand management program for the district. And we have a special schools outreach coordinator, Noah Hansen, who will work directly with schools to help them manage their transportation demand. So the reason that we have a school parking zone program is that in the district, there's a lot of schools. And there's about 300 public schools and public charter schools in the district. And as these schools have modernized and grown, as more students have moved in, we have found that sometimes we're having to choose between offering parking or offering play space or classroom space. Furthermore, We increasingly find that school staff live out of state, or that they are not able to get to their place of work using transit. So a lot of people are driving and basically parking on the street already. We understand from some of the interviews we did before the program that a number of staff are currently parking in RPP zones and just sort of taking their chances or using their lunch breaks or study breaks to go move their cars. We also see increasing numbers of RPP. That's not really an issue in one state where you had RPP for a long time, but in other parts of the district, areas that previously were unrestricted are now restricted. So all of this together caused council, not DDOT necessarily, but council to pass a new legislation back in 2018 that basically said we need a solution and we want to use some of our RPP capacity on the street where people might be going and doing different things during the day, and creating a flexible program where school staff can pay to park there. And several rulemakings later that were just finalized in August, we have a school parking zone program. So now it's a live program. It has been in the works for many years, but it is finally codified in our rules and lawmaking, which is why you're hearing about it now. Maybe you've heard about it before, but that's the main reason. This goes through a little bit of legislative history. It does not cover private schools. It only covers public charter and charter schools. But any public charter school or any public school or charter school is eligible to apply for this. This was, instigated by council action, the Daytime School Parking Zone Act in 2018, but then DDOT proposed rulemaking to actually implement it, which had some pandemic postponements, but eventually is now live. So I went through some of that already. We started accepting applications in June so that we would be ready for the start of the 2022-2023 school year. And we have only received, I want to say, fewer than 30 applications. So fewer than 10% of eligible schools have applied since June. The permits will be valid for an entire school year, and I'll explain a little bit more about how the program will work. Okay, so the program is based on transportation demand management. And so what that means is that we are trying to encourage the schools to use sustainable transportation methods wherever possible. So the schools must provide something called a sustainable transportation plan. This is something you can look up on the GoDC Go website. There's sustainable transportation plans for resident buildings, for offices, but it means that they have to make a commitment to educate their staff and to provide options for sustainable transportation. So there's different choices they can make: bike racks and showers, providing subsidies for transit, providing parking cash out programs, different things that have been proven to help people change the way they do transportation. They must assign a school transportation coordinator, and then they must give a survey to their staff that demonstrates how people are currently getting to school. We encourage, but do not require ANCs and schools to come together and request a new school parking zone. And if they do so, we prioritize DDOT. We DDOT prioritize those applications. And if a school requests one without the ANC, we will still consult with the ANC. I'll also note that we are not allowing ANCs to have veto power per se, because we know that there are some ANCs that may not allow this privilege for schools, but we are considering the information that they give us when we calculate the number of permits and calculate where the permits should go. So let's see. Okay. So how does the program work? When a school submits an application and the ANC has provided their feedback, we will calculate a number of permits. I'll go through the details of that on the next slide. And those permits are valid to be used on school days, during school hours. It extends to include some after school hours as well, since we heard from school staff that sometimes they need to stay after school for after school activities, but not like 10 o'clock at night, just a few hours after school, for use in certain RPP zones. So it is based on where the school is located. So if it is in an ANC, it is usually the ANC that the school is located. If the school is close to or on the border of another ANC, then we will extend it to multiple ANCs. Based on the way that the Department of Public Works does parking enforcement, we're not saying you can park on this street and not that street. It's just anywhere in the ANC. We can then further speak to schools and say, these are blocks that you're not allowed to park because we know that there are safety issues on these blocks, or there's a lot of student pickup activity or something like that. The idea is to spread out the impact, spread out the parking along a wider area and allow for more flexibility and adjustment over time. We do charge for this. We are charging $50 per school year, which is about what residents would pay for their first vehicle. And it is issued through our Park DC Permits website. The calculation is based on the number of staff that currently drive to school. That's based on the survey, minus the number of on-campus parking spaces. So for some schools, that's 0. For some schools, they have 100 spaces. So they might get 0. They might be qualified for 0 permits because the number of people commuting is equal to or less than the number of spots they have on site. And then we further reduce that by 10%. The program is set up to reduce that number by 10% every year until a target number is reached. And our target number is based on a comprehensive transportation review guidelines, which is based on proximity to transit. I can go into more detail on this, but this is just a high-level overview on how we are doing our calculation. What we hear a lot from ANCs is, why are you throwing all these new cars onto the street? Like, how is this going to impact me? And the response is that the schools are telling us that this is based on the number of people that are already driving to school. So we think that the people that are parking on the street through the school parking zone program were already parking on the street, either using visitor passes or just sort of taking their chances. But now they have to pay for the privilege. We can regulate them, we can tell where they are, and we can have more control over their behavior. And we also have greater ability to direct where they go and to spread them out over a greater distance. Plus, we have the incentive to reduce the number of permits every year and have the school participate with a sustainable transportation plan and have a connection with our Go DC Go program, which can provide them with a lot of tools to change behavior over time. So that is my presentation. I'll leave the slides up in case anyone wants me to go back to anything, and I will now take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Haley. So can you share this slide deck? Is it on, can it be found online?
I'm happy to send it to you. I don't think I have it online, but I will send it to you after this.
Yeah, we need a copy of that slide deck.
Sure.
So how many teachers and staff members are there at HD Cook?
Is there somebody from HD Cook that is online now that can answer that?
Well, I mean,
question?
I guess my question is, I just found out about this program. I was asked by a community member to consider a support letter for this. And I guess the thing is that I don't know. I find like I'm a little bit concerned about this program in general. Like, there's parking issues all over Adams Morgan, and so and Adams Morgan is one of the, thanks Jackie, 60 to 70 staff at HD Cook. So how many of those are going to be allowed to park on our streets? Adams Morgan is actually one of the better neighborhoods when it comes to public transportation. You can get to practically every line in the metro, and there are 5 different bus lines, including 2 circulator lines that you can get to. So, yeah.
So I can't answer. What I cannot answer right now is that what we are going to ask of Cook, and we have not received this as of this afternoon, is a survey of their staff that say how many of those 60 to 70 staff currently drive to campus. I believe they did provide a sustainable transportation plan already that shows the number of parking spaces, which is in the 20s, but I don't have that exact number in front of me. So Schools, especially in transit-rich areas, would not have 100% of their staff drive to campus. So the number would definitely not be that high. But I don't have that number calculated because the school hasn't provided their school survey or their application yet.
So I guess what I'm curious also about is if the ANC supports this program, is that a blanket support? Because I mean, I guess the thing is that like you presented the program and I see the program from what I could understand, from from what you shared. But if the ANC goes and says, okay, we support this DDOT program, does that mean that we're going to have 70 staff members of HD Cook freely parking in our neighborhood every single day on Ontario and Mozart and Fuller?
No, that's a great question. So let me give you a scenario of two things that happen. What will definitely happen is once you receive from Cook a completed application, and the full application, which means they have their sustainable transportation plan and their survey, we would say to you, we've received this application on such and such date. Please, we're advised that the preliminary calculation for their permits is 20 on-street permits, whatever that number is. Please, here's the information. Please provide comments from the ANC by such and such date. Usually we would give you plenty of time so you would have the time to have an ANC meeting or a committee meeting and be able to discuss it. The other information we would ask from you is there any information that you know about, especially in terms of location or parking? So for example, we had an ANC that said, a school has an agreement with a shopping center where some of their teachers have been parking at that shopping center because they have capacity during school hours. Did they include that as part of and the school pays them a certain amount of money every year to do so? Did they include that as part of their on-street parking? And maybe like, oh, if they didn't, we'll make sure to redo our calculations to consider that. Another thing you might say is like, Ontario is a really important street for us, or we see that there's a lot of pickup and drop off activity, or we see that there's a major bus route that goes on this street. Having a lot of parking on this street would not be appropriate. Can you ask for the parking zone to not include these 1 or 2 blocks that are right near the school or that might be congested for certain reasons? We would like to disperse it more. We would like to see if you can also add ANC 1B, because otherwise the impact might be too great around the section where there's residential parking in 1C. So those are the types of information we would ask from you, so you would have that opportunity to provide that feedback. We're not so much looking for blanket support on the program. We're looking for, certainly if you have blanket support, great, but and we're not necessarily looking for blanket opposition. If you're like, I hate this is the worst thing ever, that also doesn't really help. It's more helpful if you can tell us this is what we're concerned about and specifically where or what type of information. And it's even better. I appreciate Jackie being here, that you might have an offline conversation either tonight or with her separately to say, are there things we want to go in together to say we're presenting this application jointly and we would all be pretty happy if there are this many permits and the teachers are parked in these locations.
Okay, so I was under the impression that we needed to, or we was being requested by the community member that we support this program, soon. And I have to say that from what you've given me and what I'm understanding about the program, I hesitate to give that support immediately because I don't even know what I'm supporting. I understand what you're saying. I understand the outline of the program, but until we have actual parameters, we have 3 elementary schools, including a couple of charter schools in our neighborhood. If we gave out 50 passes to every single staff member in all of those students in all of those schools, the neighbors would probably not be happy about that. So that's just one thing. Commissioner Felsenthal, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I share some of your concerns, Chair Clem. Just anytime I guess I see a program for parking in a city, I get a little just automatically concerned. Not to say it's necessarily the incorrect path. Like you were saying, based on your assessment so far, this is the number of people who are already parking in the neighborhood. I guess I would just want to look at that data, just because I'm just not familiar with it. As Chair Clem mentioned, we have great transit here. And I really want to incentivize that as much as we possibly can. I guess I have questions about a couple of things. You mentioned that, over a period of years, the number of permits allocated are going to be reduced by 10%. And I guess I'm wondering like why? Like, are we planning on putting in better transit infrastructure? I might have missed that point, but I guess I'm just wondering like why that would be getting reduced by 10% per year. And I guess my second question is, well, I guess it's a matter of just like the words we're using, because I've heard the word teachers use, but it sounds like this is applying to all the staff who works at this school. And I guess I just want to be clear on that, because I guess I understand teachers are in a special position, and often like a very difficult position. But I guess in terms of other support staff at the school, I guess if this would apply to them, I guess I'm not clear myself how it would be different than really any other DC government job in terms of parking needs.
Those are great questions. To answer your second question first, as a district government employee who does not get any parking privileges, I don't drive to work, but I also have had my own staff come up to me and say, like, why do we have this program for teachers and not for all these others? And so I totally get it. That's a council issue. So talk to your council member. But it is for all school staff, I think, mostly because we don't have a good way to distinguish between like a guidance counselor versus a teacher versus somebody who's supporting specials or special education or something else. So it's just blanket anybody who is a DCPS or DC charter school employee. It does apply to them. The reason for the 10% reduction, I think, gets into transportation demand management. So there's a bit of a chicken and an egg, right? If we want everybody in the city, we have like these Move DC goals. If you're not familiar with Move DC, our long range transportation plan, that we want most of our trips to be with sustainable transportation modes and not be single occupancy vehicles. And those focus on commute trips, but that's just because that's what we can measure. So we're investing a lot of money in bus lanes and bike lanes and transit and metro fares, but it doesn't happen right away. You have to spend a lot of time and money and education before you make that happen. So the same thing with the transportation demand management plan. We're going to require each school to say, these are the steps that make sense for our school. Some schools are not transit accessible, but the ones that are, they may say, okay, for us to get a sustainable transportation plan, we are going to find a way to budget smart trip cards for schools. We are going to incentivize carpools. We are going to do these things that we think make sense. And we assume that some things that's going to change over time. Now, I have kids and I understand that like I have to restructure my life somewhat if I want to travel with them without a car. And whatever that means for an individual family or an individual commuter, we sort of say, okay, we're setting this expectation that it's going to reduce by 10%. So plan now when you get this privilege that next year, if you get 20 passes, 2 of those are going to go away. So whether you set the expectation that like there's some sort of attrition, if somebody moves away, they don't get it, if it's a seniority thing, like we're putting that into play because you need to make some of those investments for it to happen over time. And we're already trying to do our calculation based on 10% less than the number we calculate as driving now. It's kind of like our best way to do a bit of a one size fits all approach, given that everyone's like a unique situation. But that's how we kind of crafted our policy. It's probably not perfect, but that was sort of the best that we could calculate.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Do you have a follow-up question, Commissioner Felsenthal?
Just taking a look at my notes. No, actually, no, I think that covered it. Yeah, thank you.
So there's a question from Gordon Chapin, and then there's a question from Ken.
Hey, thank you very much for this presentation. You guys are doing these all around the city, and in Ward 5, we have a lot of charter schools where this has been a serious concern. In regards to the accountability piece that you mentioned, where there's a reduction in passes over time, and you've mentioned the sustainable transportation plan that you're requiring at the outset. Other than reducing the passes, what are the future year accountability measures that you're going to say? Because I have seen other commissioners across the city say that it's already happening where parents are giving visitor parking passes to the teachers. And so I can paint a picture 5 years from now where you do this and you codify, reasonable parking amounts at neighborhood schools. But then 5 years from now, you've reduced the passes a total of like 50% or 75%. And they've just gone back to the way it is today. I definitely applaud the idea that you're gonna get TDM plans, but at the end of the day, you're sort of creating this precedent where there needs to be a transition, but there's got to be some kind of forcing mechanism, or like the enforcement around schools needs to get much better with DPW.
I've got some good news for you. So first of all, we've got a couple of different technology improvements that are like either just on the cusp of happening or have already launched. So you may or may not be familiar with Park DC Permits, which is our digital visitor pass parking program. I would consider it still in like partial stages because we still allow our paper passes to exist. And the reason we still allow our paper passes to exist is because DPW is not able to do full digital enforcement. But starting in fiscal year 23, which is 2 days away, they now will have the money to purchase license plate readers to do digital enforcement in all of our RPP zones. So I don't expect them to have those purchased and installed on Saturday, but they will have them at some point in the fiscal year, and they will be able to cover RPP zones like 90% more efficiently than they do now. So, and when they do that, it's like a scan. They can drive up, they can capture all the license plates, and they capture those visitor plates too. And so what we will be able to see pretty well is that if somebody who lives in 1C is given their pass every single day to somebody whose name matches with a former school account holder, then we'll know that that's somebody who's using it for commuting purposes, our regulations. I don't have a standard operating procedure yet to come up with how we make those matches. And I think it would be really helpful to have the school transportation coordinator relationship already established over these years. But we can work with them and say, okay, we know we're reducing you by 10% this year. We are going to be ensuring that we're not using visitor passes fraudulently. And we actually do have a way to ensure that in the future. So I'm hopeful that our technology will help us do a better job there. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about the new technology that's being brought aboard. So thanks for filling us in on that.
There's a question from Ken in the attendee list.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. This is a very informative presentation. And I would be specifically interested in what the teachers at Cook are doing right now for transportation. And one of the reasons that we moved to this neighborhood in May is because it is well served by mass transportation. And when you take a job, you adjust and you will take the bus, you'll figure out, but what are teachers doing now? And by providing this plan, are you providing an incentive to change their behaviors and just drive to work like the suburbs? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't know if Jackie's available to explain what teachers are doing now. I don't have that information. I can explain very broadly that we understand that some schools are in transit-rich neighborhoods, and our hope would be that we are getting to that point over time where there is a much reduced number of permits and that teachers have to adjust accordingly. And whatever that means for your neighborhood, if you have a teacher coming from parts of Ward 7, for example, or suburbs of Maryland, Virginia, for them to get to the right bus line or metro where you are might require several transfers and not be part of their routines, and they would have to make changes to make that happen. But beyond that, I don't have an answer to your question. I do appreciate the comment.
Thank you. And thank you, Haley. I know that you have to head over to another ANC. I appreciate your coming here and explaining the program. I appreciate the questions from Commissioner Felsenthal and the community. But at the moment, I feel like I'm going to table any motion on this. There are not enough parameters, there are not enough indications, and there's just not enough of program for me or the ANC for me to pass this forward or to make a motion on this forward. Commissioner Felsenthal, do you agree, or would you like to make a motion to move this forward?
I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you. So, Haley, I would love to invite you back in the new fiscal year or in 2023 when the surveys are finished and we have more parameters. As I said, Adams Morgan residents and the ANC are very aware of the fantastic job our teachers do, as well as the parking needs of our teachers. But we just want a little bit more information and clearer parameters on what we would be supporting going forward. So if you can share the presentation with me, I'll share it with the rest of the commission, and then we can move forward with more information as we get it. Is there anything else is that correct?
I was just going to say, I'll give you that information. As much as possible, I highly encourage you to talk to Jackie and work with the school. Provide us, if you can provide us that feedback, either in writing, if it's helpful for us to come to a meeting for you to provide us that feedback here, we're happy to do so. But if you have the information, you don't need to wait for us to come to a meeting. If you'd rather just send it to us in another way, but yeah, we're happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for your questions. And I'm sorry that I don't have the specific permit calculations, but we'll make sure to communicate that to you once we have a more complete application.
Please do. Absolutely. That would be great. Yes. And Jackie has been in contact with me and a couple of other commissioners. So that'll be fine. Absolutely. Thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, thank you. So moving on to the next agenda item, considering a contract for Sean Sullivan as a digital meeting manager. Commissioner Felsenthal, have you been able to read through this contract?
Oh, am I unmuted? Yes, I have.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
it looked good to me. It looks pretty standard. Nothing really jumped out as unusual. So yeah. I didn't have any concerns.
This is based on Gordon's contract, and I just did a couple of updates about the charging rate, seeing as Gordon's contract was based on him having been here for more than 3 years. Mm-hmm. So. But other than that, it's pretty much the current contract. And this is Sean Sullivan, if you haven't met him, Commissioner Felsenthal. And Sean and I talked a while back, and he's read through the contract. And Sean, as far as I understand, you do not have any specific questions about the contract.
Right.
So with that, are there any questions or comments from the community? Yes, apparently there is. Ken.
Yes, my name is Ken Klutsky, and I live at 1882 Columbia Road in ANC 1C03. And we moved to Adams Morgan in May, and I've attended several ANC meetings. I have significant hearing loss, and I find it difficult to understand conversation during ANC meetings. And what I wanted to do is request that you turn on the captions, and you've already done that. So the reason I was going to make the request is that, and I don't know how difficult this was to do, but Zoom has not made it easy. And so when you make the request, the people can't figure it out. There's too many hoops to jump through, but that may have changed and may have changed, and it may be really easy, but by placing the requirement in Sean's contract, basically saying Sean shall turn on the captions at every meeting, that would give incentive for whoever is managing the meeting to learn how to do it and then turn on the captions. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and welcome to Adams Morgan. I appreciate your sentiment, and I was on the email that you sent earlier this week and did some research, and I talked to Gordon, and Gordon said that, you know, Zoom has changed some of its some of the things that it does, and it's quite easy to turn on closed captioning. I have no problem turning on closed captioning. There are procedures for open and accessible meetings in DC. There are rules and regulations. They're outlined in DCMR. They're outlined in the code. They're outlined in the Open Meetings Act. On the one hand, I have no problem adding a parameter to Sean's contract that says that he will add, that he will turn on the closed captioning. On the other hand, making Sean responsible for an open meeting requirement, I think is short-sighted. But Commissioner Felsenthal, do you have an opinion on that?
To be honest, I'm not. Can you clarify what is meant by the open meeting requirement? I might have missed it.
It's just a law. The DC regulations outline what an open meeting is and what requirements are to accommodate and make reasonable accommodations for anybody who needs requests. So usually what happens is somebody will say, I would like to attend this meeting, please have sign language people there, or please have a recording device that I can hear into, et cetera, et cetera. We don't necessarily fall under all of the Open Meetings Act. What I'm trying to say is I don't have any problem adding it to Sean's contract. My understanding from his communication with everybody other than me was that he's fine with adding it to his contract. He didn't actually clarify that to me, the chair, but he did clarify it to other people in this commission. But I'll add it to his contract and make him responsible for the Zoom meeting closed captioning. However, that really should be a commission requirement. But let's add it to Sean's contract and make him responsible for a requirement that's actually on the books as an accommodation for all meetings in public.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it doesn't hurt to add it in, it sounds like.
Well, it does hurt to add it in because if Sean doesn't actually turn on the closed captioning, then he is actually going out of contract and we don't have to pay him for that meeting.
Okay. I mean, so it's something that we're already supposed to be doing. It seems like, I mean, it seems like this is something that we could just add like we could just have something that says like just like rules of how to run a meeting, like generally for our ANC.
Exactly.
And, you know, just that would just be something that he would need to abide by. But the rules would be sort of like belonging to us rather than to him. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really that familiar with the legal implications of adding it to a contract, but you know, I think, you know, if we like in good faith say like, okay, you know, for our meetings for the following year, you know, we're going to abide by these rules. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be in the contract or not, as long as we like make a very concerted effort to make sure that every meeting we have closed captioning.
I mean, yes, Gordon assured me that it's just a setting, you just turn it on and apparently it works. And then what happens is that oh, Gordon, do you have a comment? Do you want to let us know something?
Yeah, I agree with your concern that asking for specific actions in a meeting in a contract's probably not the best way to do this. My recommendation would be to add something that says, shall to the best of his ability, follow open meetings law or whatever, or implement open meetings settings and maximize accessibility. And the reason I say that or like suggest something broad is that I forget if it was this term or a previous term, is that there was energy for a few months in trying to get a second language interpretation. And then also this is automatic transcription, and I would guess that Ken would say that it's not the best also. So I would make it a broad clause that made it so that you guys could in the future pursue a stenographer, like a professional, doing the transcription, which is an option in Zoom. It's a very simple setting. And then also if something like ASL ever became a thing. So that's just my 2
Right.
cents.
Yeah, so there, my understanding is that reasonable accommodation can be requested. It just takes, it's actually a thing. It's like a form, and you have to fill it out, and it has to be 10 days, and et cetera, et cetera. And then we could hire somebody who does ASL or does transcription, and then we would get reimbursed for that expenditure. And that's fine. But to your point, I appreciate that, Gordon, because essentially what you're saying is we could add something to Sean's contract that says, provide reasonable accommodation. But as you and I both know, the transcription that's happening right now in real time may, like any other automated transcription, not be correct. And then that could be a thing, right? And we don't want it to be a thing. We want to be as helpful to our neighbors as possible. Commissioner Felsenthal, I'm going to go over to Ken unless you have another comment.
No, that's fine.
Thank you. And thank you very much for turning on the captions. I really appreciate it. I sit on the executive board of the local Hearing Loss Association of America chapter, the DC chapter. So this is an issue that we've been dealing with for a long time. And part of one thing about turning on the captions and why I recommended just to enable the captions, because you'd be surprised at how many people will speak up and say, I don't want those captions. And all of a sudden you have conflict. So if you just enable the captions and you say, the captions are enabled, if you want to turn them on, you can, wherever it is in Zoom now, and they have a choice they can make to turn on the captions, but everybody else does not have to see them. And so it decreases the potential for conflict, and they are making a choice to use automatic speech recognition.
Right. Yes. My understanding is that like Gordon or Sean will turn on closed captioning, and then it won't show on my machine unless I actually enable it on my meeting view.
Correct.
And I think that that's fine. I really appreciate you showing up tonight, Ken. I appreciate your input. The only thing is sort of going back to Gordon's point is putting it in a contract. I hesitate to put it in the contract. I wonder if we could add something right now in the contract, if Gordon could help me with a friendly, and add something to the contract that says something about reasonable accommodation or something like that. But I wonder if this could be something where we could amend or add to our bylaws that says for all virtual meetings, the closed captioning, that's our bylaws. That's us, that's our ANC, recognizing that not only has the community asked, but we recognize that this is actually a setting in Zoom, and we could outline it, turn on the closed captioning setting in Zoom. And that way, we're not saying it's an ASL interpreter, or we're not saying that it's transcription. We're saying we will reasonably accommodate by using Zoom's built-in closed captioning, which can be helpful, but obviously anybody can request ASL through the city's accommodation. Yep. Sorry, Gordon.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the bylaws is a much better idea, because that will outlive all of us. And one of the things is that as whatever happens in the future, virtual meetings, hybrid, in person, whatever, I think this codification of accessibility should be in something that probably will live longer than an annual contract or whatever. So yes, but in definitely to Ken, I totally hear you about the need for this and that it should be taken seriously. And I think that doing so outside of a contract for just a contract employee would be the best way to accomplish it.
All right. So on page 2 of the draft August 12th, 2022 ANC 1C contract for AV services, Sean Sullivan, FY 2023. On page 2, there is a sentence that says Sullivan shall transport, store, and maintain equipment. And then after that, we're talking about editing, recording. I propose, and please chime in with some language. I have to actually get there. I'm not an edit view here. Gordon, what is it that you said? Just say John will. We could say Sullivan will turn on the closed caption. Will use the closed captioning feature in Zoom. Right? I mean, that doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, like
enable automatic live transcription.
And that's sort of the Zoom wording also.
Correct.
Yeah. Sullivan will enable the, what did you say?
Automatic live transcription.
Feature for all Zoom meetings. Okay, now Sean, do you see what I did? And I don't know if you're seeing it, but I added a sentence on page 2, and it just says, so it's not, I think it's a feature. It's the same thing like turning on like having people raise their hand or having people be presenters, right? So it's not like a legal, I mean, it's legal because it's a contract, but are you okay with that amendment?
Of course.
Okay. And then Ken, if the ANC 1C asks Sean to enable the automatic live transcription feature in all Zoom meetings, does that serve part of the purpose that you were going towards?
Yes, yes, it would. It just, I think, provides incentive to automatically enable them, because one of the issues is hard of hearing people, they will not ask. And I should have asked about this a long time ago. They just won't show up.
Mm-hmm. I see. All right. Now, could I ask a usage question? Ken, if the automatic live transcription is on, do you get a notification or do you just, oh, I see. So somebody who joins the meeting would be able to turn it on or off. They would know. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure about that because it's changing so fast. But if you don't get notification that it's enabled, it's always helpful in the beginning of the meeting if part of the administrative just to say you can turn on the captions if you so desire to and move on. Just to let people know that they could do it.
I will make a note. I will make a note of that for future meetings. And John can do a little type in the chat and remind me to mention at the beginning of meetings.
Yes. Just for the record, yes, in the current iteration of Zoom, they do give you an alert when you log into a meeting. It is very similar to the one you get like when you log in, and there's a warning about recording. as well as live streaming. And so not to give people the cookie alerts on the website's a similar thing, but it is kind of, you log in to the meeting, you see it's being recorded, it's being live streamed, and then live caption is enabled.
They're getting better and better.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So so Commissioner Felsenthal, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Gordon, for your input. So Commissioner Felsenthal, I added a friendly to Sean's contract, and he agreed with that. Do you accept that friendly?
Yes.
For the contract? Okay. And so the motion on the table is to consider the contract for Sean to move it forward to the full ANC for October 5th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Right. And that's just the two of us moving that on to the full ANC on October 5th. Thank you very much. The next agenda item is the consideration of a purchase of a 1-year license for Zoom Pro. That's pretty straightforward. Have you been able to read over that, Commissioner Felsenthal?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. That's a total of $1,140 a year. That was, I was given these suggestions by Gordon, who told me all that is needed to run these meetings, and hopefully that's what it takes. So so the motion on the table is to consider the purchase of the pro license for Zoom. Do you have any questions, Commissioner Felsenthal?
No, I don't know. I don't have any concerns about it. Yeah, I assume it falls within the budget that we have allocated. So
yes, I'm a little worried about the budget, but at the same time, it can also be a monthly requirement. So the other option is to initially make it monthly, and when we get our, I mean, we kind of have to do it. So there's like, I got a report from the auditors that said that we will be getting some funding in the next month. So out from earlier quarters. So I don't think, so that consideration of the expenditure would have to be in consultation with the treasurer. But to your point, absolutely. But in terms of substance, you don't have any questions about the substance of the Zoom Pro license?
No, that seems fine by me.
Okay, and any discussion from the participants or Sean or Gordon? All right, without any discussion, we'll move this. The motion on the table is consideration for a purchase of pro license of Zoom to be passed on to our full ANC for consideration. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. So that passes 2-0. So moving on to the next agenda item, payment for Sean. So Sean has been working with Gordon for this last month, and Sean was very nice in saying that he would work this month as a trainee, but instead of giving him a trainee salary, I decided that I would propose giving him a full payment for a month of service. Do you have any questions about that consideration of payment for September, Commissioner Felsenthal?
No, that seems fine to me.
Okay. And any discussion from attendees or Sean or Gordon? All right. Without any discussion or questions, the motion on the table is consideration of a payment for Sean Sullivan for September to move this to the full ANC meeting next week, October 5th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes 2-0. Great. And then the last thing is consideration for Gordon's time. So Gordon, so because of our odd month of, well, not odd, but our usual month of August being taken off, we didn't get all these items taken care of in September. So Gordon is actually going to give us 2 weeks in October. Thank you, Gordon. And then that'll help Sean transition once his we have to actually sign his contract. We have to give him some money. We have to buy Zoom. We have to do all these things. So Gordon is sticking around for the first 2 weeks of October, as well as letting us use his license for Zoom. And so that's what this outlines and is in consideration of. So do you have any questions about this, Commissioner?
No, I do
Okay,
not.
great. All right. So are there any comments or questions from the participants? All right, great. So the motion on the table is consideration of payment for Gordon for October 2022 to move this forward to the October 5th meeting of the full ANC. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, great. That passes 2-0. All right, so all of this will be moved to the full ANC agenda on October 5th at 7 p.m. So with that, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you, everybody, and this concludes our